the wonderful podcast which you have invited me.
So from your perspective, if you could just tell us that how clinical research industry has evolved over the years.
So in India, there's a lot of scope which we had. So probably I'm talking 2010 or early 2000s. So we were working with the very few CROs.
We are majorly focusing on the young minds who wants to get into this clinical research.
Any of the in professionals, whether they have done their pharmacy, license graduations or any clinical research course, they want to get into the clinical research. So we have integrated AI in the clinical research.
Good morning all, and I welcome you for today's special podcast session. I am Divya Prabha KR, Manager Corporate and Academic Relations from Bengaluru Clinical Research Institute, and it's my immense pleasure to host this podcast session for you all. Today's podcast session is presented in association with Samahitha Research Solution, led by Mr. Srivatsa GS, who will be joining us in some time. And we are going to discuss that what are the various career opportunities and how a professional who wants to get into clinical trials have to work with respect to the technical and the industry skills. With this, I would just welcome you all again and let's have a fruitful discussion. Thank you, Mr. Srivatsa, for joining us. So before we start, can you just share your journey in this clinical research industry with us?
Thank you so much for the wonderful podcast which you have invited me. So I heard a lot of things about BCRI. They're doing a wonderful job with respect to the career, guidance to the students and everything. Coming to my journey, I started my MSc in clinical research course itself from Mysore University. So I did my MS in clinical research, then I worked with several SMOs, CROs, then I worked in some of the training institutions also. Then I started my Samahitha Research Solutions. We first started as a site managing organization, or you call as SMO. So where we used to manage all the hospitals, we used to run the trials in the hospitals, we used to get the project from the CROs, and the sponsors, and we used to run the show. So before COVID, first wave, so we had a transition period, and we got a good experienced team and a skillful resources joined together with us. And then I started as a full service clinical research organization. So we are into pharmaceuticals, Ayurveda, nutraceuticals, also medical devices. We are a one-stop solution for all the clinical research which you need.
Okay. So thank you, Srivatsa. So from your perspective, if you could just tell us that how clinical research industry has evolved over the years.
Yes. So earlier when you look into clinical research industry, so in India there's a lot of scope which we had. So probably I'm talking 2010 or early 2000s. So we were working with the very few CROs and very few sponsors who are really keen into clinical research. Apart from the big gain pharma and the pharma companies who are keen into the new molecule development. But now the perspective has been changed. So there are two ways we understand about the growth of clinical research industry. One is pre-COVID era, another is the post-COVID era. So pre-COVID era, we do have a scope in clinical research industry. We do have a CROs, we do have SMOs, we do have a pharma companies who are working towards the good goal for the society to get a good product. But at the time of COVID, everyone understood the need of clinical research, including the Ayurveda. Pharma to hai. So pharma used to they have the regulations with respect to the CDSCO and DCGI. So they are doing the clinical research. But when you come to the Ayurveda industry or nutraceuticals industry, so they have understood the need of clinical research. So from that, the new perspective of clinical research has been started. The new way of thinking has been started. So most of the Ayurveda companies, nutraceuticals and pharma companies, they are investing themselves to the resource and the research which we are doing with. Then the third part will come to the AI. So when AI come into picture, altogether the new journey has been started. So we have integrated AI in the clinical research. So the journey has been started like this. So earlier, to complete the task, we used to get some 10 resources. Nowadays, when we implemented AI, so we used to get the task with the two resources. We are just need to command, we have to give the prompt, and the AI used to do the job. That made us easier. So the evolution has started the pre-COVID era, post-COVID era, and the AI integration. So from these clinical research industry still have the scope benefits to the freshers who can able to join the industry and who can able to get their career in the industry. Because when you start into clinical research, so I have started my journey as a CRC, the clinical research coordinator. This is the basic and first and foremost step to get into clinical research. So this does from that position I moved into CTAs, CRAs, CRA1, CRA2, then to the team lead, then project manager 1, 2, then to the head of the department. I'm talking about operations thing, head of the department, then to the director level. So in the medical writing also we have the same facility. So this kind of scope we have in a clinical research for the students.
Okay, I think very rightly said. I have mentioned in the starting of this podcast that we are majorly focusing on the young minds who wants to get into this clinical research. So, what do you feel are the qualities and the skills what industry is looking from these young professionals and anybody who wants to get into the clinical research?
Yes. So for any of the young professionals, whether they have done their pharmacy license graduations or any clinical research course they want to get into the clinical research, the first thing is they have to do the clinical research course. So that they can able to understand the regulations, the concept, the quality compliances, and the rules of the clinical research. See, every industry has a set of principles, set of guidelines, set of regulations we have to follow. So without understanding those regulations or set of guidelines, and without understanding what is the basic need of clinical research from a resource, so we cannot step into it. So understanding the clinical research is very much important for any of the freshers. For that they have to learn the clinical research, they have to go to the any courses, they have to do the courses. Then the consistency is very much important. So I cannot say that they have to come, they have to join, and they have to leave. But the consistency of clinical research is very much important for us.
Okay, Srivatsa, just wanted to know, like many students, they are very confused about their career opportunities in clinical research. So, could you briefly tell us the career pathway in clinical research, data management?
Yes, it's a very good question. Thank you for asking me. See, as I told earlier, there are three aspects of clinical research. One is the fresher, the mid, and the management level positions. So we have to choose what kind of course we are going to do, or what kind of knowledge we will take when we are doing clinical research courses, or the guidance which we get from the other people. So in the clinical research industry, to start with, so I can suggest you go, as I told earlier, we can go with the clinical research coordinator, CRC role. Okay, so once you have a hands-on experience in the CRC role or CRC position, so where you will understand the basics. From the basics, you'll understand. So how the clinical research industry has been growing, and what are the regulations is involved, what are the steps has to take care while we are working, because it is not a joke, right? So we are working with the patients. So we are end of the day we are going to get solutions for the disease or therapeutic areas where it will give a good benefit to the society. So in that crucial part, we are into healthcare pharma, so or we are into healthcare research industry. So we have to keen focus on the patient safety. That will the upmost and foremost. So we have to start with the CRC, and then you can, after having the hands-on experience, you can go with the CRA role. Before that, you can go with the CTA position, clinical trial associate, and then clinical research associate. Then you can have 2 years of experience in CRA. You can apply for the team lead position. Then you can apply for the team lead 1 and team lead 2. Then you can apply for the project manager, then senior manager, then head of department, so, and the managing level position. So, and when we come to the data management, so data associate, data coordinator will be there. So, and this is the position. Then the data manager will be there, and the data regulators will be there. And then you come to the medical writing part, where you regulate the protocol. Means you will write the manual, you will write the CSR, we call a clinical study report. It's like you write the reports and everything. For that, junior medical writer will be there, medical writer 1 position will be there, medical writer 2, and senior medical writer. Then you go with the director of the medical affairs. Then regulator, you would come to regulator aspect. So regulators, so you can go with RA associate, regulator associates. So then intern in the regulations, also regulatory. And then regulatory experts in some of the regulatory, like are you expertise in FDA, are you expert in US, sorry, CDSCO, are you in expertise with the EU. So these are the regulatory aspects. And then if you come into the pharmacovigilance, so you have a many openings from the starting of in the pharmacovigilance. So you have to understand what is your skill set is basically. So whether are you going to go with the medical writing, then you have to only focus on the medical writing part. Are you going to go in the operations? You have to work in the operations. Then you have to start as a CRC. Or else you want to go with the data management. You have to start as a data associate, or else regulatory, or else the medical part. So if you are a pharma graduate, then you can go with the medical monitor also. So these are the basic things which you have to understand. And then of course the big CROs and the big pharma companies, they have the different varies of roles, like regulatory associate, and you can call it as a centralized database associate, and a data lock manager, all those things. So that is all a subset of this kind of, these are the basic points.
Okay. So I think in your previous answer you have mentioned about skill set.
Yes.
So how do you think ICH, GCP plus regulatory knowledge and documentation skills are very important for freshers?
Yes. See, clinical research is all about regulations and documentations. So there is a general saying in clinical research: the thing is not documented, the thing is not done. So you have not documented, it is not done.
Yes.
So when you have to document, since it is in a healthcare industry, everything is regulated. It's a regulated market. So you have to understand the basic rules and basic principles. I say GCP earlier, we have 13 principles. Now we have a 12 to 10. We have a 10 principles. So these principles is the foremost and the first guidelines. And when we are doing the trials in India, we have to understand the ICMR guidelines. We have to understand the CDSCO guidelines, because so these are the guidelines will direct us to conduct the clinical trials or execute the study. How are we going to execute the study? How are we going to conduct the study? How are we going to plan the activities? How are we going to write the proposals, write the project work, everything? So for that, these are some regulations, or some, you can say, some principles and the guidelines. That is very much important. Without understanding the guidelines, like without understanding the manual, you cannot cook, right? You don't know the ingredients, means you cannot cook. The same way, you have to understand what is the regulations, what is the guidelines, to follow that. Without understanding, you cannot follow the guidelines. So that is very much important. The basic and the foremost thing, you have to understand the GCP guidelines, good clinical practices guidelines, and then it comes to the ICMR guidelines. Then it comes to the other regulatory guidelines. Then it comes to the history of clinical research, because when you're entering clinical research industry, you have to understand, right, what is the history of clinical research. So how clinical research evolved from James Lind to the now the recent era, how it has been evolved. Without understanding this, you cannot enter into it, right? You don't know what it is, where it is, how exactly it is, and what are the contribution of the people from Nazis to James Lind. Everyone has contributed to clinical research. So without understanding this, you cannot involve yourself 100%. So regulations is topmost priority. So if someone is attending the interview, the first part will come into the regulations of GCP guidelines. So the interview will ask the question: so are you aware of the GCP guidelines? So do you know all the regulations, all the guidelines? Tell me the principles. So these are the basic interview questions they will ask, because that is your base. Regulations is your base. You have to understand this.
Okay.